Hey, everybody, welcome back. I am William Poet, and you are here with the AI for Knuckle-Draggers podcast, the number one AI podcast in the world, at least in the hearts and minds of our posse. I'm here with Mike Schmitt, my partner in crime, co-host, and kind of all-around horseman, business strategist, and great human being. Mike, welcome to our second show.
Hey, thank you. I'm really excited to be here with you today. And we've been having so much fun as we've been putting this together and brainstorming and thinking about how do we share stories about all the stuff we've learned over the last few years, but really, especially what have we learned in the last 6 months and all the people that are around us that are starting to kind of, really embrace the perspective of AI and how it can change their lives, their families, their companies, even themselves personally. And it's not about, you know, it's about using it. From my mind, it's about using it as a tool to help us get to bigger and better things. And I think it's something that we're loving to get people to be familiar with.
I agree completely. And I think one of the things, certainly in the world of people that are like eating, drinking, and breathing AI, I think it's easy to lose a little bit of our humanity. And one of the things that we want to do and we will do in this show is how do I use AI, not just how do I leverage it to be more effective in business? How does it help me be more human? How does it help me show up with more health and fitness and as a better partner and parent and really this show is about it's about real tools that real people are using every day, and we had a great time in our first episode. If you haven't watched it and you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, click below and join the posse. And Mike, I know in prep for the show, you've been having some great conversations this week with some people who are we're going to call them AI curious. And what are they excited about? What are they nervous about? How are they using it?
I think a lot of people are nervous. A lot of really bright people are nervous about it. They're not sure. They know that it gets some of the confirmation bias, right? Because I think the earlier versions of chat and Gemini and that they were kind of set up to try to blow smoke up your rear end a little bit, make you feel good about using them. And I think the new world that we're building has, we're trying to mitigate that confirmation bias. We're trying to get real data. We're trying to get real facts with bibliographies and sources quoted so that we can become better. I think a lot of people are concerned too about, hey, I'm talking to a machine. Does that mean I'm going crazy? And you're not going crazy, at
Right.
least in my mind.
And that's a really good point. And one of the things that I think we're doing is we're almost putting unfair expectations on AI. We're using it as a coworker. We're using it as an assistant. Many of us, when we'll be talking about this, are running multiple agents doing real work for us simultaneously. It's not perfect. It might hallucinate 2% of the time. You need to check your sources. But I'll tell you what, I've been in business for over 40 years. I haven't found that perfect employee. I'm certainly not perfect. So I think, managing your expectations and being clear about what you need from the machine. And there are ways to make sure that if you're doing data driven work, you do have the right sources, you cross check against different AI tools. But it's a really good point. And I think having the right perspective and mindset around how we use these tools is critical for people to have the best experience possible.
Yeah, and I think, okay, so you touched on it just a second ago, but like data security. One of the things I did with mine when I set up my agent back in February was I bought a brand new machine, completely separate, not networked with my main machine. I do family business consulting, so I've got data on my business, but also on my family's, wills and estate plans and financials and things like this. And so I don't want it on the same machine. So I kept an air gap on it to make certain that it was separate. And the data that we do put into it, we've got customers. There's a property owner who does asset management and property management, and he's a little concerned about going through and putting actual data for the property in because right now the way it's being used is we're uploading it, and then it's going into one of the large learning models that we don't have control of, and then it's bringing back, and then our machines are helping to do a bunch of the analysis. But there's a point in time where you got to be a little bit cognizant about, hey, what, who's going to go see this data, and by sharing it, are you now inadvertently making it more public than you wanted it to be made. And I think over the next 6 months, 12 months, I think that's going to be solved. I think we're going to be able to host our own learning models and data, and then just be able to go through and get things that tweak us to get us a little better. But we're going to be able to host our own data, and it won't go outside of our own area of control.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. And was talking to a future team member yesterday at lunch, and that was one of his concerns is how is my data being used? Where is my data going? How do I control access to things? And in terms of agents, so we're going to continue to differentiate between just using an LLM, ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, and agentic tools. And one of the things that we are recommending for our clients is you have a separate computer. It can be an old laptop, but it's something where you build your agent team. They're housed there. It's kind of a sandbox. And if you think of it this way, if I hire a brand new person and they come into my company, they're not going to get keys to the kingdom on day one. I need to understand their competencies. A level of trust needs to be established. And so it's very similar when we're building agentic or AI tools. And right now, a lot of people, ourselves included, believe that you should own your own intelligence. Having a GPU in your home, having a place where you can have an agent, and we'll talk about different types that work in there, but it lives there, it's controlled, it's safe, it's not going to get hacked, it's not doing things that are inappropriate. It's a really great use case, and I think it's a legitimate concern for everybody engaged. Let's pivot a little bit, and what is something I know in the last episode you talked a little bit about Baxter, and that's your well. Tell us about
Baxter Black,
Baxter.
man,
Tell
that
us
great
about
cowboy
Baxter.
poet.
What does he do? How do you use him? In real world use cases.
Yeah. So, I set up Baxter, named after a guy that I've gotten a chance. Had the chance to meet a cowboy poet from the kind of 60s, 70s, and 80s here in the United States. Veterinarian, lived in Arizona. Um, but I wanted that personal, that personal perspective, right? And we set up some boundaries. We set up what my ethic is, and some moral compasses. And I'm a Catholic married man. I've been married to Ann for 31 years. I've got three daughters. I have a way I like doing business. I'm a Rotarian. I was recently a president of my Rotary Club. We have the four-way test, right? And is it the truth? Is it fair to all? It will build goodwill and better friendships? And is it fair to all concerned? And if you go through and you look at your compass about the way we want to do business and interact with our communities, we wanted to give some guardrails to the way Baxter, who is acting as my chief of staff, acts. So he's looking at my calendar. He's giving me prep dossiers. So if he knows that I'm meeting three or four people in a day, he'll go through and start running dossiers on the people that I'm going to be meeting with. And these could be bankers or estate planning attorneys or clients. And he'll go out and spend 10, 12 minutes just finding out what he can and about how we might best serve them or might best interact with them if we're going to partner with them. He helps remind me when it's time for me to do my morning prayer or to go through and do my workout, because I don't always, like some of us, we get busy, and sometimes my workouts get forgotten. So there's a little reminder in there to go do that, and then build in time during the day, so I'm trying to be my most productive and my most active for my clients, for my business, for my other activities that I'm involved in as well. And so I kind of use him as that. And the first 90 days, I didn't give him any write access. He could read things, he couldn't write. So we're slowly walking this through, that maybe by the end of the year, if we're comfortable with it, he'll actually be able to reply to certain, go through my email box, filter out those that are important, raise them to the top, and maybe even do some soft replies on things that are, not as important.
So you just brought up a lot of a lot of really good points, and one of them being context. For for most people, the way they've been trained to use AI is you open a chat. It really knows nothing about you. It doesn't know your values. It doesn't know that you've been married for 31 years, and it's sort of like a genie or an oracle that you ask questions to, and it kind of spits out information as to how valuable. And one of the things last year when we were really talking about prompt engineering is context. The more context an agent or an LLM has around you or around the question or the outcome that you want, you're going to get an exponentially greater return. Well, the beauty of these agent teams that we're building on our personal machines is we give them a personality, we give them a voice, and we actually build a separate brain. So what I did with my agent Tat is I've got 3,000 documents on my computer and emails and letters and correspondence and just really the heart and soul of who I am. And I had my team build a second brain. So it took all of this data, all this information. It knows my business. It knows my philosophy. It knows how many kids that I have. It knows my love. And so, when we have a conversation, it's contextual. And one of the things that I love, here's just a great example of having a team member like this. Balance is really important. And as we move into the age of AI, things start moving faster and faster. It's really easy to lose sleep, get mixed up priorities, and do a lot of things that aren't serving the world. And one night at 3 a.m., I got this idea. I'm like, oh, hey, Tat, I want you to do X, Y, and Z for me. And Tat's like, no, go back to bed, man. You need, sleep is a priority. And that level of engagement is where we're headed, and Sam Altman, president of OpenAI, says, in a year, or everyone is going to have an agent that knows everything about you, that knows your calendar, knows your preferences, knows your personality. And again, you get to control how much you share. But imagine that trusted advisor that has total access to the context of your life. You might have a heart condition. You might have an eating disorder. You might have a dietary restriction, and it's going to
You might have a
maybe
child with special needs that needs to be attended to, that you need to be reminded, hey, let's not forget about this.
100%, right. You're not presenting in the way, and we'll talk about that a little later in the show because we're building some home agents for homeschooling, and that context is really critical.
Well, it is, and I think it's one of those things that as people start to get, figure out how this fits into their world, how do they use it? And I think you and I have decided, right, as we're talking with people, and we're not here to sell a bunch of stuff. We're just here to talk about how people are using it and make it a little more. The idea behind this podcast is to try to give people a perspective on how to start to use the tool, use the technology, because it's easy to be afraid of something that you don't understand. But how can we bring some level of understanding to where people can begin to then not be afraid of it, because it is coming, right? And it
It's here.
and
It's here.
it's here, and it's changing. And I'm pretty optimistic about what it's going to do for the U.S. economy and for the global economy, and how much change is going to happen here in the next 10 years, 15 years. Um, and so how do we get regular people who are super bright but maybe a little hesitant to become a little more comfortable with it? And I think giving it this context, giving it some regular inputs that are consistent and authentic with the way you live your life is a big step in the right direction. Um, because it's not done being built yet, right? Every day it's iterating, it's agentic, it's trying to do continuous self-improvement. We're not there yet. But well, some people in the Silicon Valley think we're there. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're getting there. And I think, in a very short period of time, you're going to get to a spot where these machines are constantly doing self improvement. Our machines already are doing
Mhm.
some level of self improvement. When we go to bed and we tell it to go do something, it starts running analytics and is fixing things that it finds that we didn't even know were wrong. Um, but it's how do we get comfortable with it by not being by because by becoming more familiar with it.
So, since this is our second episode and we're called AI for Knuckle-Draggers, let's do a little bit of an AI 101, right? So, your basic LLM is a chatbot. So, you've got ChatGPT, you've got Claude, you've got Gemini, you've got Grok. Those are kind of the big four. Perplexity is another one, kind of a research assistant. They each have different personalities. They have different styles of how they present material and information. So one of the things that you should do right now, they're free. You can download them for free. You should have them on your phone. And one of the most effective ways that we used these last year before we got into the agent system is just have them compete and contrast. So I want to create a marketing document or a newsletter on AI. So I will kind of come up with a thesis. I'll give it to ChatGPT. ChatGPT will work on it. Then I'll take it over to Claude and I'll say, hey, my assistant and I built this. Tell me what's working. What is it? What needs to improve? And then Claude will populate it and enhance and improve it. Then I'll take it over to Grok. And when you get in the habit of multiple minds working for you, you get to understand how these different tools vary, what their strengths and weaknesses are, but everything gets improved. And so one of the first kind of knuckle dragger skill sets is never take the first response. Whatever you get back, say, okay, how do you 5x the quality of this? So just really push on the machine and then have other LLMs push back on the machine and just play with it on whether you're how to cook a reverse seared steak. I shared last week how to change put in a dimmer switch. And so I was just thinking Mike's a great horseman and I grew up around horses and familiarity.
I don't
You
know
got
if
to
I
spend.
would classify myself as a great horseman.
All
I
right.
am
Well,
a competent horseman.
you're a competent horseman, and you certainly know enough that familiarity with the animal, not only as horses in specific, but the individual animal. Time spent with the animal, developing a relationship with the animal, understanding what their quirks are, right? I mean, that's really how you become a competent horse person. I hate to say it, it's a lot the same with AI.
Well, and people are thinking about how much job disruption is coming and all, well, okay, if you're going to displace a person, which again, in most of the companies that I'm working with, most families I'm working with, they're not talking about displacing people. What they are talking about is bringing AI into their existing organizations and maybe 2xing or 3xing the amount of revenue or the amount of activity the same number of people could do. Because for them, for most of the people I work with, they've built cultures, multi-generational cultures that they have people that fit into them, and that is a really hard that's a harder skill to find than the technical skill of whatever it is we're doing today. And so they want to maintain their cultures, and if they've got people who fit in their culture, then how do they help 3x, 5x, 10x their ability to contribute, and then also increase incomes and all this other stuff as the businesses build, then we can do better for our people too. And so you know this is again, I think it's something that we want to embrace and figure out how to do the best and be in an authentic way to us.
Well, you touched on something really critical. You've got culture and you have competency. And I want you to think about this. I started my career working with special operators 40 years ago, and I got to train with some of the most powerful teams in the world. And they kind of have a matrix, a 4-part matrix, where you've got character on one side, high character or aligned character, misaligned character. And then you have competency on the other, high competency, misaligned competencies. Well, you can have someone that is a level 10 competency, but a level 2 cultural fit for the organization. And that is a recipe for disaster. You can have someone that is a really amazing cultural fit, they just don't have the competency to fit in and do the job within the organization. So, one of the use cases, think about AI. What AI is going to do is it's going to, right now, today, it will 10x the competency of anybody on your team. Your accountant, your marketing person, your finance, your research. I don't care what aspect of the team they're in, it's going to 10x their competency. It doesn't mean they're a cultural fit. And so, Mike really touched on something important. And we can use AI to assess our culture. We can use AI to assess our alignment. So there's kind of two things taking place simultaneously. One, everybody on the team and everyone on your team needs to be learning, acclimating, understanding these tools and seeing how I can become twice as effective at what I'm doing. But then also as a team leader, I want to make sure that I am using these tools not to create desperate cultures or silos, but really harmonize the people that we're bringing together to accomplish our mission. So I think that's a huge point. And I don't think people in the AI world talk enough about that.
Well, and here's a really simple exercise that I think I have a lot of families and closely held businesses working on is we've passed down culture sometimes by oral tradition and by just sheer tenacity of putting up with the misbehaviors of some of our family members or the gracious caring of others. But maybe a great exercise for you to go into Claude or ChatGPT right now is start an exercise around what is my culture? What is my true north? I've got a buddy, Dr. Andy Garrett, who's a clinical psychologist, and he talks about organizations' true north. And you know, what is it? And start a simple conversation around, hey, if I were to start a mission or purpose statement for my company, if we don't already have one, then how would I define it? And let it walk you through how do you do that? If you already have a mission statement for your company, does it also apply to the family that owns the company or the closely held ownership? And are there and are they congruous with each other? Because sometimes the way we operate in the workforce is different than the way we want to operate in our family. And I think one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about over these last 3 years is trying to be in alignment with the way we live our lives, the way we interact in our community, with the way we run our businesses, with the way we interact with people. And I think that one of the wonderful parts that I think the AI revolution is going to give us is help us find our creative passions and be able to be in sync with our whole human beingness going forward, both professionally, within our community, within our family, culturally, all of that. But start with a little simple program. Ask Claude,
I
what's my
love that.
what's my
I love
purpose?
love that, and I think this would be a great kind of note for us to wrap on, and to take Mike's exercise and really kind of get 10x juice from it. Go into Claude, go into ChatGPT, and say, I want you to guide me through a purpose discovery exercise or a cultural values exercise, and I want you to create a persona that would be the best in the world at guiding me through this. I want to know what your pedigree is. I want to know that you have 40 years of experience doing this. And so what the LLM will do is it's going to create a paradigm or perspective. So it's not just going to be, if you don't tell the system or the agents who you expect and need them to be, what character and competencies you need for them, you're going to get a very generic, watered down response. But one of the things that we do with our in our agent teams each one of our agents have been given very specific skill sets and very specific competencies so that they are experts, they're best in class at their function, whether it be research or marketing or developing company cultures. And then have the professor, the agent, the expert guide you through a series of questions. It will question you, it will interview you, and then it will give you the response that really brings clarity to you, to your family, to your organization, and then continue to work on and crystallize and hammer on that until it feels like something that is who you are. So that's a really great kind of global use case that people aren't doing. Families should have mission statements. You're in multifamily, succession. Companies, mission statements. An individual, true north. Who am I? And then everything else we can kind of build from that. That's great, Mike.
I
Any
think to your
last
point,
thoughts?
I think you know what I'm looking forward to continue to have these conversations, William, and I'd love to encourage anybody who's still listening to click on the link below, join our posse. Let us know what you'd like to hear about as well. We've been working on this. We started off with ChatGPT 3 years ago when it first came out. I think William started probably the first week. He dragged me into it about 6 weeks after that started, and we've just kind of been playing with it. But these last 6 or 8 months, there's been enough changes that we've really started to make AI a really integral part of the way we're doing our business, our marketing, our research, all these things. Um, I'm looking forward to future conversations with you, William.
Yeah, and you guys, hey, if you've made it this far through this video, you're already a member of the posse. So like, subscribe, share. We're sending out great stuff to our members of the posse. We've got some special gifts and we have events and opportunities. So join us, and we'll see you next in our next episode for another real conversation for real people using real tools. I'll see you soon, Mike.
Thank you, William.
I was raised in the rust, built tough as nails where the